All right, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today for First Forward's first generation celebration. My name is Dr. Dr. Tasha Gardner, and I'm the director for the Center for Inclusive Education and Scholarship, home to First Forward. First Forward was created about 4 years ago by myself and two other colleagues who are ourselves first generation. And we really wanted to figure out what Drexel would respond to in regards to another program. And what we found is having students, faculty, staff, and even alumni in a space was really powerful because everyone has a story to tell. Everyone has lessons to learn, no matter if you are an alum or a faculty or staff. And so the basis of our programming is really just to bring together all of those populations. Today, I am happy to welcome a handful of students from Drexel University College of Medicine. So this is just a series of events that we have for this week. We still have two more events. Tomorrow, we are working with the Undergraduate Research and Enrichment Programs, UREP, to host a panel on research as well as fellowship. So we'll have some students sharing their experience. And Monday, we are partnering with the Office of Veteran Student Services to host a panel with current traditional students as well as student veterans about working together in the classroom, sharing their similarities and differences. So we have people on the Zoom call. We also have people in YouTube. So definitely feel free at any point. If you have questions, just type your questions in the chat. We will be monitoring that so our panelists will be able to answer those questions. I definitely feel free to check us out. We have a Facebook page at Drexel First Forward that will have information on the upcoming events that I just mentioned. Now I'd like to pass it over to Philip Seeger.
Hi, everyone. I'm Phil. I'm part of the first generation group at Drexel University College of Medicine. I'm here today with some of my colleagues, and we're really excited to be here. We're just going to share a little bit about our experience when we were in your shoes as undergraduate students who were interested in pursuing a career in medicine, and then maybe some specific things, obstacles or things we had to overcome, as first generation students, to just sort of share our experiences. You can see all of the panelists here. I'm gonna see if I can share my screen for a second. Okay. All right, can you guys see that? Okay, great. So this is just the names of everyone on the panel today. We have 3 first-year students and 3 second-year students, and this is our contact information. So if there's anything that comes up during the panel, and you don't feel like you got your question answered here in the chat, please feel free to email any of us, and we'll get back to you as quick as possible. And if you just have any questions in general, please feel free to reach out to us. We're really interested in sort of setting up this mentorship with the College of Medicine and the undergraduates university. So please don't hesitate. Alrighty, so if you want to take a picture of that or something, or a screenshot, maybe I'm gonna just leave it up for a couple of seconds and then we'll go into our introductions. Okay. All right, so I can start. So my name's Phil. I'm originally from this area, I'm from Lansdale, Pennsylvania originally, so it's really nice to be back in this area for medical school. For undergrad, I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and there I studied chemistry. I had like a really, really influential science teacher in high school who was our chemistry teacher, and she sort of pushed me to go that route. And I was also interested in medicine at that time, and it seemed like a major that would hit all of the sort of boxes for the science classes for attending medical school. And Pitt had a nice biology option within the chemistry degree, so I was able to add some upper level bio classes as I went through. So I graduated in 2018, and then I took 1 year in between medical school or undergrad and medical school, and I stayed out in Pittsburgh working in the hospital as a patient care technician. And I would say this was probably the most valuable experience that I had during my time before medical school. It was really a great opportunity to spend a year getting to know patients, getting to know how to interact with patients. And I feel like it's been super valuable now in medical school with some of our standardized patient interactions and moving forward into our clinical years 3 and 4. So, and then I also wanted the panelists maybe to bring up something that was a challenge for them during their time in undergrad into medical school. And I just would like to say I didn't really start out college super great. My first year was definitely a big adjustment for me, and sort of getting on track with some of those science classes was definitely a big change from high school. But it's something, I was able to catch up on and improve over my years, and I sort of had an upward trajectory in undergrad. And then another thing that was sort of tough was the application cycle, and maybe we can get a little bit more into it later on if you're interested. It's difficult to navigate, especially if you don't really know anyone who's gone through it. There's a lot of timeline. There's a lot of applications. So I think it can be confusing, and it was something that was difficult for me to navigate. So those are a couple of the challenges that I experienced. Let's see. So let's go. Jade, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Jade. I'm a first year. I am from South Jersey, so I'm not too far away. And I got my bachelor's degree from Rowan University. And I majored in biology. I graduated a year early, so I had a gap year in between, and I worked as a scribe for Scribe America. And I think that was really meaningful for me because I got to see like the day-to-day life of like what it is to be like seeing patients every day. I was an outpatient, and then the physician that I worked with was in the hospital for 1 week out of every month. So I got like both sides of it. And then I did my master's here at Drexel. I did the Drexel pathway to medical school. So I am here for any questions about that. And I finished that in May of this year and started here now. And a challenge that I did have, same as Phil, is the application process. Like applying to medical school is a little difficult, and like knowing when to apply, how early, getting everything in is a little tricky. So I did have trouble with that.
Mike, you want to go ahead?
Hey guys, my name's Mike. I'm another one of the first year students here at DUCOM. I grew up pretty close, right in Bristol, Pennsylvania. It's a pretty remote area. If you're local, you're probably familiar with it. I got my undergrad at Westchester. I graduated from there in 2019, and then I kind of took a gap year in between. And like Phil, I actually had my most meaningful experience during my gap year because I was volunteering and working with the research coordinators in Jefferson's emergency department. And that was really valuable to me because throughout my entire undergrad career, like I was shadowing at a lot of like private practice places and, outpatient therapy and things like that sort, but I never had exposure to how things are run in the ED and the ER. And I think that was like super important for me to get that experience in my gap year, because now I kind of know the way the flow of the ER works. I know the pace that it works at. And I think it'll be really helpful, when my third and fourth years roll around. So yeah, that was probably one of the most meaningful experiences to date. Something that really was challenging for me, the application was of course challenging, but even before that, just like putting the pieces together to have a good application is really hard when you don't have like, a family member to tell you like, you got to do X, Y, and Z to look to, to show you belong in medical school. I kind of had to figure that out on my own, like, a lot of you guys have. So that was difficult. I learned that using your resources at like your undergrad facility helps. I had a really good pre-med advisor. I had a really good organic chemistry teacher who I did research with. Both of them really put in like a great word for me. And I got really close with them. They were really able to help give me ideas on where to go and what to look into. Another thing, I do think it also is it's also an advantage in a way when you don't have like those family members telling you what to do, because you don't, like, I never felt any outside pressure to come to medical school. Like I know I'm here because I want to be here. I don't have any regret at all. I'm not saying people who have family members in medicine have that regret, but I just know for a fact that, like, there's a reason I'm here, and it has nothing to do with any outside noise. So yeah, I'll pass it off. Next person. Again, any questions you guys have, email, throw them in the chat. Take advantage of this time, because we're all excited to help you guys out.
Pravin?
Hi, my name is Previn. I'm originally from Wilmington, Delaware, so like Phil, kind of in the area. I went to UD for undergrad. I graduated in 2014, and then I actually decided to go for a PhD at Thomas Jefferson. So I was there studying hematology for, upwards of 6 years, and there I was able to interact at the hematology clinic, and I really got more involved with the medicine side of science and more involved with patient interactions. And that kind of inspired me to not necessarily change careers, but deviate towards becoming a physician scientist. And that was a really big, meaningful experience for me, because, up until then I was kind of solely focused on science. So being able to interact with patients and see the power of science really motivated me to make the jump. Similar to kind of what Mike and Phil were getting at, there's a lot of generational knowledge that as a first gen you don't really have. I lost count of how many applications I submitted where you had a box, is your family member a physician? Is your parent a physician? So that can be very discouraging. And it's also, I don't think, very set up for people who are like me, and maybe Janet can also comment on this, who are career changers, non-traditional tracked. So I found it very difficult to try and, massage my application to fit all the nooks and crannies that med school is looking for.
Janet?
Hi, my name's Janet, and I am from Newton, North Carolina, so actually pretty far away. It's a little small rural town in Western North Carolina, and I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I majored in anthropology there. So definitely a non-traditional path. I can answer any questions about people that maybe aren't interested in being science majors, but still interested in medicine. And I stayed in Chapel Hill for 2 years as a full-time research coordinator on a study with trauma survivors. And I would also, echo what everyone else has said, that sometimes those postgraduate experiences end up being the most meaningful. I think for me, sometimes I doubted whether I was supposed to be in medicine because I didn't love science the way a lot of other people did. I enjoyed it, but like chemistry just wasn't my jam. Even biology, sometimes I was like, this isn't that interesting to me. And when you are first generation, sometimes that's all you really have to like measure, success in medicine and what that means. And I think that working experience really was meaningful to me because it was the first time I interacted with physicians every single day, a lot of anesthesiologists and emergency medicine doctors. And I just started realizing like I had everything it took to be a great doctor. And even though I was good at that job and I liked that job, I still felt like I really, really need to go to med school. This is what I want to do. So I think it gave me confidence that I didn't really have prior, because again, you don't really know what to measure, success for medical school or what makes a good applicant, especially when you don't have family who's been through a similar thing. I would say that's one of the big challenges. Another, although being first gen doesn't necessarily mean you're low income, there is a very strong correlation with being low income, and I was. And I had to work like 25 hours a week in a restaurant all throughout undergrad, and that can be severely limiting. Chapel Hill's in the research triangle in North Carolina, which is really fortunate for medical students, but a lot of people do research for free. A lot of people volunteer like a ton, shadow a ton, and it can feel really discouraging if you like financially can't afford to do things for free. So I think that that's a huge challenge, and you also don't necessarily know you need to be doing all of those things, or trying to squeeze it in where you can. I would say not knowing, as early can feel like a setback, but I would encourage you all not to perceive gap years or any, additional experiences that you take on as setbacks, because I also did a master's, after I worked for 2 years, I was also in Drexel's Pathway to Medical School program. So I also know a lot about that. But yeah, I would just say take people's advice with a grain of salt, including ours, because everyone's experience is different, but it's definitely challenging.
Padma?
Hi guys, my name is Padma. I am originally from Maryland, so not too far. I went to University of Maryland for undergrad and I graduated in 2017. I then took 2 years off before coming to medical school, where I did a master's at Drexel as well. Similar to Jenna's, but it was a different program, Drexel's Master of Biomedical Science. College was great. I had a little bit too much fun, so I didn't do too well in my first couple of years, so my GPA did suffer, and I didn't really have many resources telling me what to do because of that. And my pre-med advisor told me to forget medicine as an option, and I didn't really have any support from undergrad to tell me how I can still make myself a competitive applicant. So I think the biggest challenge for me was just still sticking through with it and figuring out how I can change my application to become a competitive applicant, which is why I did a master's program. And here I am. But I'd say like my most significant experience happened in my gap years. Drexel really opened up its resources with shadowing and clinical experiences and volunteering with different demographics inside Philadelphia that just opened me to a new population and a new exposure to what it means to be prepping for medical school, and also what it means to be in medical school. So I am a big supporter of gap years. I think it's great. I think, as long as your end destination is medical school, it doesn't really matter when you get there. As long as you are ready and you're prepared, that's what matters the most. And you'll find people along the way to support you.
Yeah, I'd really like to echo the sentiments that a lot of people have shared about their gap years. I almost wish I took more. I feel like some of my interactions with students in our class who took a few years off are some of the most valuable interactions that I've had, who have been in the field or they've done something that's non-medical, and they can really share their insights just into life, something that, you might not get going immediately from undergrad into medical school. So I think I've learned a lot from my classmates who have spent time doing other things and getting a master's and really expanding their horizons prior to medical school. Was there anything chatted in question-wise so far?
Yeah, so I got a private question asking, are there application fees and how expensive were they?
Yeah, so there are application fees, and it's quite an expensive process, sadly. So the initial fee on so there's like two levels of fees. The first thing you do is basically a common application through AMCAS, and you pay $140 for your initial school, and then $40 for every subsequent school. Does that sound right still?
Yeah, I think that's
okay.
Spot on.
Okay. And so given the fact that I guess people typically apply to maybe 15 to 20 schools, maybe people even do a little bit more, maybe some a little bit less. You're talking like hundreds of dollars. I think I spent maybe $500 or $600 applying through AMCAS. And then for each school that you apply to, they'll send you a secondary application that has some school-specific questions and some more information that they would like answered. And generally, each one of those single applications from each school is around another $100. So if you're applying to 20 schools, you're in the neighborhood of about $2,000, which is, it's insane. There are programs, some schools do, I think most maybe, where you can apply for like a fee waiver as part of the secondary application. I didn't qualify for anything like that. Do you guys have any experience with the fee waivers?
Yeah, there is one through AMCAS. I wasn't able to finalize mine. I had like issues with, I don't know, something on my dad's and getting information from him. But like if you are able to fill out like tax information or, you know, just kind of like FAFSA type of information through AMCAS, you get like a waiver for a lot of the primary applications as well. So I had a friend who was able to like finish it and qualify for it, and he said it kind of saved them for being able to apply to the schools he really wanted to, because he said he was really struggling to come up with money, and he realized that he qualified for that fee waiver. So yeah, I would suggest everybody, I mean, even if you don't think you qualify, just look into it, because if any way you can possibly save money, because these things are not cheap, and you only go, no matter how many schools you accepted to, you only go to one medical school. So like you're going to end up spending money on applications that you didn't really need to begin with. So look, I would give that a look when applications roll around for sure.
Does anyone else want to add to that? Good.
Okay.
I can answer the question in the chat that just popped up. It says, what are some things you wish you had known about the process to apply to medical school earlier in undergrad? I'd say that like making a list of everything, like the check boxes you need to mark off before you need to submit the application, can get a little long and can get overwhelming. And I think I wish I knew that I didn't need to rush it. Like I didn't need to get everything done within a couple of years, because it's hard to put 100% justice into every single one of those. And whether it's like you just want to focus on school, or you just want to focus on getting a really good research opportunity or really good clinical opportunity, like the fact that there are gap years available and, you know, it's not frowned upon. I think I wish I knew that that was an opportunity for me early on in college, so I could take my time with things and, you know, really just focus on school, because there were oftentimes I just got so overwhelmed with like volunteering here, volunteering there, but then I had an exam the next day and I like didn't prioritize properly because I felt like I had a deadline that I had to just make sure I got all these checks down before this application process. But I think what med schools really want to see is that you do everything, but you do everything really well. And, you know, you put your 100% into every single one of them instead of just 50% in everything and getting it done before you graduate. So I wish I knew that.
Yeah, I would just want to echo what Padma said. I definitely, like, if I could go back, I wouldn't have spread myself so thin. Like, I would have stuck to like 2 or 3 like things and like done 100% at them, like instead of trying to volunteer here and do different things, because medical schools do look at like how well you're doing these things and like dedication over time. So like if you're just doing like multiple things but not really, you know, you don't have a leadership position, or you're just like doing it just to put it on your resume or put it on your application, like that's not really beneficial, rather than sticking with something, moving up in leadership positions, or like, you know, organizing events, that kind of stuff. And I kind of agree with Phil. Like sometimes I wish that I like did more gap years. Like I had a gap year and then I did my master's. So that gave me time between. But yeah, I definitely would not have rushed it. I think there's a lot of rush to like not waste time to go straight through. But the experiences that I've had like for my gap year and my master's, like learning how to study, just like, you know, enjoying life really is really, it's really benefited me now in medical school. And I agree with Phil that a lot of the people that I met who have taken gap years are very well-rounded, like good conversations, just have a lot of experience to like add to the field.
So I have a question from YouTube. How have the challenges you faced during the application process shaped your view of the medical field?
Could you repeat that once again? How have the challenges of what?
How have the challenges you faced during the application process shaped your view of the medical field?
I can start with that. I think it's very easy to start comparing yourself to your friends or other people in your circle who are also applying to medical school, because you start hearing about what they put on their application and how they explain something. Like, you could have the same exact application as a friend, but have completely different opportunities presented to you at the end of the day because of how you articulate yourself in those experiences and how you explain yourself in your interviews. So I think the challenge of just trusting myself and trusting the process and not comparing myself to someone else was very difficult. And I learned that everyone has their own story. Everyone comes from a different background. And there's no point in comparing yourself because you are your own best version and only you can describe what you did, not someone else.
Yeah, I think I would also add, it's very humbling. And I think that a lot of pre-med students especially are like, tend to be the kind of people who are very type A or, don't often get rejected from things, or just like feel like they're always on top of everything all the time. And like we've discussed, you spread yourself really thin in undergrad and you feel like you're doing great. But I think when you apply, it does kind of put into perspective, like we've mentioned, how like what is actually important to them. Like they want a person, and they want a person who has a meaningful story to tell that, kind of gives them some insight. Like, why would you be a really great doctor? So just checking off boxes doesn't equal a great doctor. And I think when you start applying, you start wondering, like, I got rejected from 19 medical schools. It doesn't matter as long as you get into one. But you just start realizing like there's a certain place that's a good fit for you, and that failure is okay. It's not really failure. It's just that wasn't the best fit for you. So I think it can be very humbling, but it also helps you understand that medicine's trying to evolve, and they don't want they don't want robots. They want to know more about you. They want to know why you would be a great doctor. And once you start understanding that and, adapting your application to make them understand you as a person better, it kind of gives you a better insight into like, what is a good doctor? It's not just test scores, but they are important.
Yeah, I actually just want to like echo and reiterate what Jenith said, was that like they don't want robots. That's huge for the interviews. Like you cannot go into these interviews and this process thinking like, I need to talk about my MCAT scores, my GPA. Like that's not what it's about at all. Like these, on top of them not wanting robots, you need to realize and remind yourself like these doctors, these faculty from these schools that are interviewing you, they're not robots either. And I think there's a big, at least for me, I had this really scary idea in undergrad that like you walk into these interviews and you have like 10 sets of eyes just beaming on you and like they're just grilling you with questions, and like it's the most terrifying thing in the world. That's at least how like I guess my pre-med office at Westchester portrayed it to be, and it's totally not that at all. Like obviously you need to be prepared for these interviews. Like they want to know that you have an interest in their school, so don't show up to the interview and like not know a single thing about the school. Like that, you have to do that, but at the same time, like don't stress about trying to be someone you're not. Just talk about who you are. And the biggest question is, very beginning, tell me about yourself. And obviously tell them why you want to get into medicine, but like, don't be afraid to talk to this person like a normal person. Like, tell them what you like to do. Tell them if you're into sports, if you're into music, if you're into, like hiking, anything like that. They love to see that because, when you get in the real world and when you finally are a doctor, like, the best doctor is going to be the one that can just have a conversation with anybody about anything. So yeah, I mean, that's some advice I guess I would give. And that's something I've realized about the medical field is there's a lot of like, everyone's serious when it's time to get serious, but it's not scary. Like there's a lot of really nice people and, it's a lot more laid back than you would think during the interview.
I have another question. Are there scholarships and financial aid offered for medical school like we have for undergrad?
So I don't know if somebody could speak to this better. I know like through I can share my experience. So I know through our financial office, they'll usually send us like applications to apply for some small scholarships here and there, depending on what you qualify for. They're really good at getting that information out there. I do believe there's some sort of need-based scholarships at Drexel, although I'm not sure how much money is available for funding my medical school education. For me, it was very similar to undergrad, where I filled out the FAFSA, applied for basically federal student loans, and that's how I'm financing my medical education. I think that's pretty common. It's expensive, and most people have to take some sort of loans, which I think in becoming a physician, it's not as daunting. I mean, it is a lot of money to see you having to take out that amount of loans each semester. It's a significant amount of money. I don't want to make it seem make light of it, but I think they give you those loans because you're able to pay them back once you get into practice. But yeah, do you guys have any experience with that?
I don't have the best experience, but I'll just like chip in a word. So there's still private scholarships that you can look into. You can just Google like medical student scholarships. I was looking into a few of them over the summer. And a lot of them like aren't the same way the medical application process is. Like you can start applying for these like only like a month or two before school starts. So I wouldn't really stress applying for those at all, like right now. And then there also is like the ones through FAFSA, and it'll be a need. I think they have a need-based one, like Phil said, and there may be other ones that are like possibly like academic related, but I'm not too familiar with them. But yeah, there's possibility for it, but you're most likely gonna have a significant amount of loans, but it's it's one of the prices to pay. It definitely sucks, but it's one of the prices to pay to be where you want to be.
So I don't have any more questions over from YouTube at this point.
Okay, I have another private one before we get to the one that was in the general chat. This is a two-part question. What programs, systems, or other resources did you find most beneficial when preparing for the MCAT? And did you use certain techniques or practices to keep yourself refreshed on basic general sciences?
So I actually used one of the like classic prep resources. I used both Kaplan. So I took my MCAT twice. The first time I used Princeton Review, and I actually signed up for, the first time I did Kaplan, and I signed up for one of their like boot camps. and they helped me stay on track. And since it was my first time studying for it, I didn't really understand how to create a schedule, how to make sure that I balance school and the MCAT material. The second time I used Princeton Review. I just wanted to change up the resources, but that was actually given to me through my master's program. They provided evening classes as part of our tuition. So I used both. I really enjoyed the prep classes. I know that you don't need to do an in-person one. They have like different versions where you can just do like on your own, at your own schedule, resources online. They're different packages. But I do know that that can get pricey and expensive because these are like classes you have to take. But I think the most important factor is creating a schedule for yourself and spacing out how you want to study everything and cover everything alongside having a baseline practice of your basic sciences.
I'm also going to share, not because I think what I did was necessarily the best way, but because for some people it might be necessary. So I was working full time when I studied for the MCAT, and that's really challenging. But it's doable. And I think that's another thing that's really intimidating if you are low income and you need, to pay bills or whatever. And you just hear everybody is like full-time studying for a month and then they're taking it and they're done. And you're just like, I can't not work for a month. That's not feasible. And it's very scary, but I will say it's doable. I also took the MCAT twice because I underestimated how much time you had to dedicate. I would leave work and I'd go home and I'd eat dinner and then I'd like study for a couple hours the first time I took it, and like that is not enough. Eventually I worked out a schedule where I would get in really early. I would leave by 4 and I would just study until like 10 to 11, go to sleep, wake up, go to work, do it again. And it's horrible. I mean, like as far as just like, you give up having a life for a while. So I'm not saying that because it's the best way to do it. I think if you can dedicate like full-time studying, that's the easiest and the best for your mental health probably. But for people who really can't do that, I will say that like I got a good score. I didn't have classes because I couldn't fit them in. But I know they do night classes, but they are also expensive. But I just want to say it's very possible to be working while studying for the MCAT. I did use Princeton and Kaplan books. So it was a lot of like self-accountability for making sure that you make a schedule and follow it.
Yeah, I did something similar to what Jennifer did, and it's sort of why I took, one of the reasons why I took the gap year was because like I really didn't want to be studying for the MCAT while I was in classes during undergrad. So I took it between the summer of my junior and senior year, all like at the end of the summer. And I was working full time during that summer, would come home and study. It is tough, and I studied like the whole summer for it because I really didn't have the time to do that dedicated, like really hard every day. So I did study for about 3 months. And I used Kaplan. The biggest thing for me that really helped me, and I wish I would have started it sooner, was doing practice exams and practice sections. I think like a lot of standardized tests, there's like a bit of a pattern. You sort of have to learn how they're asking questions and what their sort of the focus is. And I think that a lot of the test preps do a really nice job of sort of trying to condense the information down a little bit for you, and highlighting what's important. I would say if you have the time to dedicate, all I'm going to do is study, that's fantastic. Then I would say if you can do it while working, I feel like that's the second best option. And then maybe while you're in school, as maybe at least for me personally, I felt like it would be difficult in my head to split time between studying for the MCAT and then also studying for in-person classes. I feel like I would have been too stressed out about trying to like maintain my GPA at the same time.
We have another question in the chat. It says, many of you said that your gap year experiences were very meaningful and critical to your application. Did you update schools frequently through the cycle or just included it in your primary and secondaries?
So what I did is a lot of the medical schools on their secondary, they will have like since graduation, like what have you been up to basically, or what are your plans for this year? So I included it there, as well as I put like a small little section on my primary application and included it as an activity that would, and I sort of put in the dates that would be scheduled for the gap year, just to make it known. During the cycle, I did do one update with a little bit about my experience during my gap year, and I also had someone from the department that I was working in, like add a supplemental letter of recommendation, just sort of like to try to show that I was having some sort of meaningful experience during that time.
So I did sent updates, but mine were school specific, and that's something you can actually find on the school's website. So some schools will say we don't accept any updates throughout the cycle. Some will say only one or two. So I like made a huge Excel spreadsheet on all the schools and how many updates, because a lot of the stuff I was doing my gap year was crucial to my application. So I sent updates to the schools that accepted it in like email format. I did send, like Phil did, I sent one supplemental recommendation or letter during the gap years just to add on. But I think it's really important you do your research and homework to find out what schools accept it.
Okay, do we have any other questions right now?
If you guys don't mind, I'd prefer to ask it over the microphone.
Oh, absolutely, go ahead.
Sure. So my name is Anthony Lisi. I'm a chemistry major, second year at Drexel. Thank you guys so much for putting on this panel. It's been very informative so far. I've been enjoying it, making my notes on my notebook. But I just wanted to ask, so this is an organization at the med school right now, but what are your plans to maybe collaborate with undergraduates more often and have events like this and create these mentorship opportunities in the future?
So I can talk a little bit more about First Forward. We are looking to host more like panel like this in the upcoming term. So in the winter, I know we're definitely going to do a couple. We're going to do a couple in the spring as well. And I think, you know, there's always opportunities to collaborate with the medical school as well as other programs on campus. I know, you know, from my own experience, we have a lot of students who are first gen and interested in medical school. So I do hope that we can do more in the future. We just don't have our calendar set, but definitely we'll be doing more in the future. If there's anything specific that you would like to see, we are open to feedback as well. So you can definitely send me an email, firstgeneration@drexel.edu. And then we can, you know, see if we can make it happen.
I would also say Philip and I are outreach co-chairs this year, and it was extremely, you know, it's been very limiting with COVID, and I know that's like, you're hearing that all the time. But some of the cool things that I think like will slowly return to Drexel are people do, you know, guided tours of the medical school. They do it with high schoolers, they do it with different school organizations. And we were hoping to, you know, give you all a tour of like the gross anatomy lab and just kind of give you like an inside look at a medical school, because it is pretty removed from your undergraduate campus. So I know that's something of interest to students. And we hope to also extend that out to high school groups and, you know, try to help engage first generation students, you know, even younger. Can't really be in that lab 6 feet apart. It's it's a little challenging, but those are just things that hopefully will return once there's a better sense of normalcy.
Yeah, thank you so much. I look forward to it once everything goes back to normal.
So I have a question. Oh, the person just retracted it, but it was something about research. And unfortunately, I didn't memorize it enough before the message was retracted. But maybe you all can talk a little bit about the research that you are doing as medical students.
So I'm not doing any research at all right now for med school, just because I'm still, your first year. I don't think I'm alone when I say this. You really are just trying to adjust to the workload of classes. Maybe get some community outreach, opportunities here and there, but you really want to set your foundation with classes and your studying. But as far as my undergrad research, I don't know if the question referred to undergrad at all, but I think undergrad research was pretty big for me because it really gave me a good project to, get involved with and talk about during the interview process, but it also gave me a mentor. So I mentioned my organic chemistry professor. That's actually who I did research with. So I would say, if you are someone who's an undergrad and you see everyone doing research around you and you're getting worried that oh my God, I don't have any research, don't panic at all. Go talk to your professors, talk to your science professors that you think you already have a good relationship with, or even talk to ones that you don't have a relationship with yet and see if they have opportunities, because that's how you build that relationship. But also don't feel pressured. I mean, I say this with a grain of salt because I think research kind of is a big thing for med school applications. But if you really have no interest in research at all, I wouldn't waste your time doing it. I would just go double up on a lot of community service work and, clinical opportunities. But if you are interested, don't be afraid to reach out and ask your undergrad professors. Because I'm sure, especially at Drexel, I'm sure, a ton of them are willing to help out and have projects that they love to bring you in on.
I would also say to piggyback off that, don't give up on research if you have one bad experience. I wouldn't say I had a bad experience, but at Chapel Hill, everybody does research. It's just kind of expected of you if you're in the research triangle. And the first research I did was with mice. It was biomolecular research. And as I've stated, I was a humanities major and I kind of hated it. And I wasn't really excited to go in every day. And I felt like I was doing something to check a box. But I did it for a summer full time. And then when I worked after college and worked with, I was working with sexual assault survivors and looking at all these adverse health outcomes that are associated with trauma. And having clinical research to me, it just all of a sudden I was like, wow, I love research. This is amazing. This is really important. And so just think about how your brain works and what you like and try to find research in that if possible, because forcing yourself to do research that you don't care about, you might have to do it. If you're trying to strengthen your application, might just be something you have to do. But I think if you can find something that's a good fit and that you're going to love, you're going to be so excited to talk about it. When they asked you about it in an interview, I mean, it was hard for me to stop talking about the research I did. So just try to find something you're passionate about. I would say research is important and it'll only help you in medical school, because then when you apply to residency, they still want to know what research have you done. So I would definitely say it's important, but there's so much variability, under research. It doesn't mean one thing. It doesn't mean pipetting necessarily.
All right, I don't have any final questions in YouTube. Do you have any questions, Eve?
No, I don't.
All right. Any closing kind of grains of wisdom from our panelists for all of our participants tonight or today?
I feel like I've talked a lot, but I want to make sure I give out as much information as I can. So just to end, a couple of things. What Jenith was saying is huge. You know, don't force yourself to do a research project that you hate. Don't feel embarrassed that you are bored with it or don't like it. But you have to try things to know if you like it. You know, nobody is born knowing if they like to do organic chemistry research or biology research. You know, those are things you have to try and you have to experience them to know if you like it. If you like it, that's great. If not, then no big deal. Move on, find something else that you love to do and you're passionate about. And then it will show in your interview when you can talk about it and like you're not flustered talking about it. You're not just kind of mumbling to make it look like you know what you're talking about. So I think that's huge.
I just want to say we covered a lot of topics today, but just in case you guys have any extra questions or anything comes up that you want to ask, Phil put our contact information on that slide in the beginning. So feel free to email, ask any questions, like we're here to help.
And trust yourself. Like, put some faith in yourself, put some faith in the process. It's going to take time. It's a long journey and a long road, but you'll get there. You'll get to your end destination. You just got to keep thinking of the big picture and motivating yourself to keep going. It's hard because, you know, you may not have family members telling you what to do or how, like, pushing you in that direction, but there are, you know, resources like us, your pre-med advisor, that will definitely here to support you.
I just also want to repeat what I said earlier about like always taking people's advice with a grain of salt, because for first generation medical students, mentors are kind of everything to you. The people that you meet, sometimes you just want to latch onto them and be like, please tell me what to do, how to get there. But everybody doesn't know everything. And I had very discouraging people I met in my life, like Padma, my pre-med advisor, was like, I don't think you're going to get in. And then I had mentors who were just, I mean, the reason I changed my major was I had a mentor who was like, you can do that. Like, that's perfectly fine. Like, I wish I had majored in something else. Like, do it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. We'll see. So I would say like mentors are everything, but nobody like knows your future. Nobody knows what you're capable of except for yourself. So just take advice with a grain of salt. That would be my closing advice.
This came up a little bit earlier when we were talking about the application cycle, but I really think like it's not just something they say. They're really looking for well-rounded people. They want to know you as an individual. And I just would say don't chase the boxes or feel like you have to check all the boxes at the expense of not spending a lot of time following the handful of things that you're really interested in. I think it really shows on an application, and I think it really makes you like a very interesting and well-rounded candidate if you show I did a lot of work in these fields because I'm really passionate about this. I think the same can be said though if you really don't know where your interests lie, particularly you try a few things out. Like Mike was saying, you don't know until you try them, and then if you find something that you really like, stick with it. You know, see if you're doing research with a physician, see if you can spend time shadowing that doctor. If they're your professor and you really like that, you know, you have a good interaction with them, try to get involved in some research with them. And I think like you're able to sort of check a lot of boxes by keeping it narrow in the area that you're really interested in. And don't let anybody tell you that what you're doing like isn't enough, or like, oh, like you need to, oh, you're not doing this or what have you. Like, I think if you, a lot needs to be done, but if you sort of follow your interests and you can speak passionately about them, I think that will be enough to carry you through.
All right, I'd like to thank our panelists again today for joining us and sharing all of your thoughts and wisdom about being medical school students, first generation students, and hopefully all of our audience has learned a couple things. Definitely keep in touch with everyone. Hopefully we will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow will be presentation about undergraduate research and fellowships. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to email firstgeneration@drexel.edu or like our Facebook page at Drexel First Forward. So thank you all for your time and stay safe. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all so much. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.